Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, a episode that I certainly did not want to do, a conversation that I promise you South Carolina fans don't want to have, but we're sitting here in early May. I think we have to have the conversation, and that is Rahsul Faison still not eligible to play for South Carolina in the 2025 year. Now, Shane Beamer updated the media Monday night and said that the expectation is still that Rahsul Faison will be ruled eligible and will be playing for South Carolina in 2025, but they still have not gotten official word on whether or not he's eligible. I want to start with just why I think this is blatantly unfair by the NCAA, but I think I want to have a deeper dive and have a conversation on one, like what I think Rahsul Faison brings to South Carolina and why he's so important to the South Carolina offense in 2025. This is one of the bigger storylines that nobody's talking about. Now, South Carolina is one of the hottest teams going into 2025. You have a lot of incredible national media analysts talking about South Carolina as a legit contender in the SEC and arguably one of their best offensive weapons. We're still not sure if he's going to be able to play in the 2025 year. Nobody seems to be talking about it. Why is it unfair? I mean, it's unfair to the kid and it's unfair to the program. Now, why is it unfair to Rahsul Faison? Look, the NFL draft just happened a couple of weeks ago. If Rahsul Faison had known that he doesn't have eligibility in 2025, he would have entered the NFL draft, and I promise you, he would have been a day 3 selection in the NFL draft. But because he thinks he still has a year of eligibility, he commits to South Carolina, goes through winter workouts, goes through spring practice. What's it going to look like if the NCAA comes in and says, hey, you're not eligible to play in 2025? You cost that kid an opportunity to get his name called in the NFL draft and certainly hurt the beginning of his NFL career because he still thinks he's going to be playing in college in 2025. Blatantly unfair to Rahsul Faison, but at the same time, it's very unfair to the South Carolina program. And Shane Beamer talked about that Monday night saying, hey, it's not fair to us because we have a legitimate running back one that we think is going to go for over 1,000 yards in 2025. We don't know if he can play. Look, if we knew Rahsul Faison wasn't going to be able to play, I promise you, we would have gone to the spring transfer portal window and added another running back. South Carolina not knowing if their starting running back is going to play in 2025 with the spring portal wrapping up, it's also unfair to South Carolina. I don't know. And what Shane Beamer said is, look, we have talked to the people we've talked to. We've talked to his previous programs. We've sent all the paperwork necessary to the NCAA. I don't have a problem with the NCAA doing their due diligence and making sure he's eligible to play. I certainly have a problem with it taking 5 months. Like if there was going to be an answer, the answer should have came before spring practice even started. So you could tell Rahsul Faison, hey, you're not eligible. You should start working out for the NFL Combine and draft. In South Carolina, you might need to get to work on finding a running back in the portal. The fact that the NFL draft has happened, the fact that the spring transfer portal window has closed, and we still haven't gotten an answer is wild. And I feel like at this point, if the NCAA rules him ineligible, like we just ride at this point because you screw South Carolina and you screw the kid Rahsul Faison. Now, that was a little bit longer of a rant than I thought it was going to be, but I wanted to let that out. Felt good. Now I want to get into what Rahsul Faison brings, why I think he is a massive part of this South Carolina offense in 2025. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the South Carolina fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. I can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas the way many of y'all have. Like whether we're breaking down portal commitments, whether we're talking spring practice storylines, the amount of support y'all have shown over the last couple of months has been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's just start with Rahsul Faison, the player. We're going to go back to what he did at Utah State over the last 2 years, but I want to start with what he's done since he's gotten to South Carolina. This is a guy that came into South Carolina probably a little over 200 pounds, is up to 220 pounds. He was largely considered a smaller, spacier running back coming from Utah State. He's a running back that physically, just look at a picture of this kid, can do it at the SEC level. And he gives you a little bit of best of both worlds. He's a guy that when he gets to the second level, he's making people miss, and he has the home run hitting ability that you're looking for from a running back. But at the same time, even when he was a little bit smaller at Utah State, still ran extremely physically. He's a guy that 69 missed tackles forced in 2024, 3.8 yards per carry after contact in the 2024 season. By the way, 400 carries the last 2 years at Utah State, 0 fumbles. Like, I completely agreed with the evaluation of, hey, Rahsul Faison was the second best running back that was available in either portal window. Maybe Justice Haynes only being the better one, although you could argue that Rahsul Faison might have been the best. Really good football player that we knew he was a good football player coming from Utah State. Everything we've heard from him during his time at South Carolina is the expectation is that he's going to be a difference maker, one of the better running backs in the conference and potentially the country in the 2025 year. The other part of it is like the running game to South Carolina is huge. As much as everybody wants to talk about Lenore Sellers, as much as we've talked about Lenore Sellers and what he can be in 2025, you make no mistake about it. South Carolina wants to run the football. Like in 2024, they ran the football 59% of offensive snaps. That was top 20 in the country. There was a direct correlation between when South Carolina started to run the football better, they started winning games a little bit more consistently. You go back to 2024 against Clemson, 267 rushing yards against Clemson, 214 rushing yards against Vanderbilt, 286 rushing yards against Texas A&M. There was a point in the 2024 season where South Carolina turned the corner. It was Lenore Sellers started playing better football. The offensive line started doing their job at a little bit of a higher level, but a big part of it was they started running the football at a very high clip in the month of November. That was when we saw South Carolina look like a legitimate college football playoff caliber team. That's what it's going to look like in 2025 as well. What fires me up is not only do I think Rahsul Faison is a very, very good running back, I think this offensive line is going to be able to win at the line of scrimmage, specifically on the inside. Boaz Stanley, 325. Trevon Baugh, 340 pounds. Tree Babalade, 340 pounds. That's probably what your three interior offensive linemen are going to be. That is a big and physical SEC offensive line, something that we haven't necessarily seen from South Carolina. Now, look, I know there are still some South Carolina fans that have that like apprehension to buy into the offensive line, and I completely understand it because we've seen some shaky offensive lines from South Carolina over the last couple of years. This is a unit that, for the first time in a while, you look at it. You look at the starting five that's going to be trotting out there, I believe, Sunday night against Virginia Tech. I believe that's the week one matchup. It's going to look like a legitimate SEC offensive line from a body type standpoint. A lot of blue chip talent, a lot of veteran pieces you added through the portal. This offensive line, in my opinion, is the most talented offensive line, most complete offensive line that South Carolina has, especially in terms of what they can do in the run game. You want to have a difference maker running the football behind that offensive line, and I think Rahsul Faison is that guy. Now, again, that's not a shot at like Oscar Attaway or a guy like Jawarn Howell, but I think Rahsul Faison is clearly that guy that you want taking 20 plus carries for South Carolina, a guy that should be able to run for over 1,000 yards for South Carolina in the 2025 year. It's crazy that we're having this conversation. We certainly shouldn't be having this conversation. That's where we are. And I like from a selfish stand, this is just pure selfish right now. Like I want to see this kid play for South Carolina because I think he's a legitimate difference maker at the running back position. We'll update this conversation when we finally hear the news from the NCAA. Still won't satisfy me. Like the fact that we're talking about this in May is a joke, in my opinion. We'll see when we get the news. And it's funny because Shane Beamer has to kind of walk the line, right? Shane Beamer was clearly frustrated about this situation Monday night. But you also can't just ragdoll the NCAA because they're the ones who have to give you the nod for Rahsul Faison to play. I can ragdoll. I'll say what I want. Big storyline to monitor, not only for South Carolina fans, but like, look, if you're a fan of SEC football, it's a big storyline to watch. We're talking about a contending team in the SEC with arguably, outside of Lenore Sellers and maybe Nick Harbor, Rahsul Faison is the difference maker on this South Carolina offense. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.